Hello there, welcome to Ukrainian Media Podcast. This season we are focusing on German-Ukrainian relations. I am Olena Solodovnikova and I am privileged to be joined by Tanya Krombach, head of the publishing department of the German Cultural Forum Eastern Europe. Hello, Tanya.
Hello from Berlin, Olena. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. You are one of the co-organizers of the networking meetings and speed dates at Kyiv, Cafe Kyiv in Berlin. How do you assess the significance of this event for lobbying Ukrainian interests in German community? Could you elaborate a little bit about this event, about your goals?
Yeah, maybe I tell you something about the history of this event, how it became a project. So it is a project which was developed by me and Viktor Müller from the organization Fondu Ukraine in Hamburg. And we developed it last year at the tech camp about disinformation and how to counter it. This tech camp was organized by the US government together with the Academy of Politics in Tutzing in Bavaria. And there we had a lot of workshops, the workshops, their topic was how to act against Russian narratives in German media or all over the world. And participants were Ukrainian and German journalists and activists from all over Germany. And maybe I tell you something about the organization I work for, because this kind of project is not typical for us, because the German Culture Forum for Central and Eastern Europe, Deutsches Kulturforum Östliches Europa in German, is a non-profit organization which deals with the German-speaking parts of history of the countries in Central and Eastern Europe, which was sometimes already centuries took place. And our task is to present this part of history to a broad audience. And since our foundation in the year 2000, we always work together with Ukrainian partners, especially in cities and regions where also German people used to live, such as Chernivtsi or Lviv or Bessarabia or Volhynia. And for us, it was always clear, we have also always emphasized that Ukraine is an important country in European history, closely connected to the countries of Central and Western Europe through shared traditions in politics, trade, and culture. So the start of Russia's war against Ukraine in 2014 immediately generated a feeling of solidarity on our part, because we already had a lot of Ukrainian partners in the time when other organizations didn't work, had so many collaboration with Ukrainian partners. And when in the year of the full invasion, or full-scale invasion, 2022, we expressed it in two short sentences in our Facebook page. We wrote Odessa or Lviv or Kharkiv. We alternated different Ukrainian cities. Is in Europe. Europe is in danger. So it was always clear for us that Ukraine is a part of the democracy history in Europe. In 2022, we started solidarity events, and me and my colleagues started lectures in schools about the historic backgrounds of the Russian war against Ukraine, so all over the century. And it were lectures, we didn't only talk about it, but we had always from the beginning dialogues with the students, and also asked them, where do you get your information from about news and everything? And not a few of them answered TikTok and Telegram. And we always had, everyone was very focused, and they found it very interesting because they didn't know too much. And also the teachers, by the way, about Ukrainian history. But at the end of the lessons, always some students came and said, no, I read that, and Russia is not Russians' fault, it's the fault of the NATO, and so on. So these typical narratives we were always confronted with were for me the reason to participate in this tech camp and to think about it, how to fight against these narratives. Because these students say, when I say, my information is from serious sources, for them they aren't serious anymore because they are not used to read or to see news which are really precise research by professional journalists. So this is really a big problem in Germany, because now there was a survey and it was clear that young people, I thought it was about 50% of young people don't believe that Russia it's Russia's fault, this war. And
ridiculous, really ridiculous.
That's really a big problem. I mean, the older people, it's a little bit better, but especially the young people, they're really a very important target group. So anyway, but now you can ask why we have made this project in Café Kyiv. It's a special kind of developing projects in this tech camp. And everyone thought about it, what can we do against it? There was also funded internet lexicon with typical Kremlin narratives about the war and with information against it, about the truth and so on. But for us, when Victor and me met, we thought it would be good to strengthen or to empower the Ukrainian organizations in Germany, to empower them to have influence or just to talk or how to talk with political persons or persons from politics and media in Germany, so that they can tell them the truth, and that they also learn just not to fear to go to the political actors, for example, in their cities, and just to work on a low level, but something which is possible for them, because they're of course volunteers and they don't have the time to travel to Berlin and make a big advocacy politics there. And that was our idea. And so we thought it is, at first step, it is very important that they network. There are already network organizations like Allianz Ukrainischer Organisationen, and they also have events, but we wanted to reach also little organizations in little cities or towns in Germany, and give them the possibility to travel to Berlin and there to see the Café Kyiv, which is a great event with many panels and very interesting and important politicians and journalists. To know about the activities of each other, but also to get the opportunity to speak with these people from politics and media who are anyway at the Café Kyiv. So we didn't have to organize an event in a place and every one would say, no, I have no time to come there, but they're already there at the Café Kyiv, and there they get the possibility to speak with them. So that was our idea, and also 2 workshops about, workshops which should empower them in the sphere of politics and media, how to speak with politicians and journalists, for example.
As I'm sure that is a very strong idea, because now we have the problem, and you confirm that Ukraine need to be separately from Russia in the mind of Germans, even young Germans who some of them still continue to associate Ukrainians with Russians, with some part of Soviet Union. As for me, that is a very big problem, and the discussions, as you provide very useful to debunk everything against Russian propaganda. But could you elaborate how strong is Russian propaganda and information about Ukraine in German media now? Some examples about that, how they try to make everything upside down, for example.
Yeah, I think one problem now is, of course, that the AfD party has quite a lot of they're about 20% now when you see the surveys. And because of that, for example, German television or German media have the feeling that they have to give them a voice or an opportunity to speak about their ideas. And they sit in talk shows, and of course there are counter voices, but still they have the opportunity to speak about their ideas. And a typical idea is that German or democracies don't want to have peace negotiations with Russia. They don't want to have it. They only want to sell their weapons or give their weapons, and which is really, it's nonsense. There were trials to have negotiations, but still they give them the opportunities to say that, and I think that's a problem. And the other problem, as you said, is really that many German people just didn't know anything about Ukraine, and this was something, it was like Russians because it was part of the Soviet Union, and especially the older people have this in mind. And this narrative, Ukrainian language is always like a dialect of Russian and so on. So they have all these narratives which are now it's getting better because we have really now a lot of sources in the internet, also in Germany, for example, of the Institution for Political no, I don't know the word. No, it's an Institution for Politische Bildung, so to let the people know, to get more information for having a good, decide what is the truth and what not. And if you don't have the information about Ukraine, for example, or about the history of the Russian aggression, you aren't able to decide what is the truth and what not. And that's also for me was the reason to start very early with the students. So the youngest were 12 and the oldest were 17. So you have to start very early. And as I said already, the survey about young people is really terrible. And it's not getting better. Yeah, but back to your question, that's a problem, I think. And anyway, for me, the biggest problem is this narrative. The West or the democracy countries don't want to negotiate peace. And there's also only you can either give the Ukraine weapons or negotiate. They don't see that it is connected. And I think this is very spread in Germany.
How do you think, how many Ukrainian journalists directly cooperate with German media now? They can opportunity to talk about Ukraine from the Ukrainian point of view.
You don't see many of them. And when you have, for example, you see the talk shows at the beginning of the full-scale invasion, you had more Ukrainian journalists and people from Ukraine or scientific people and scientists or I don't know, normal people, but you had many more of them. And now you see already, I think, 2 years that people are talking about Ukraine, but not with Ukrainians. So at least in television, for example, in talk shows and also in newspapers, yes, you have, of course, in television, you have Vasily Golod. It's very important journalist because he has the insight in Ukraine and he grew up in Germany. And there are journalists, but not, I think, in the media, which typically are seen by normal German people. I think it's it could be much more. And it's really strange that at the beginning, there were more Ukrainians, and now there aren't. Yeah.
But now that is, I observe a tendency when Russian speakers, liberal Russian speakers, as they say it, have come to the German media outlets, talk here, for example, for Bild every time, and they settled on Germany. Do you think why we have this tendency? No Ukrainian experts and so many Russian experts in German media.
I think probably me too. I studied Slavistic, so Russian, of course, and Czech, and also East European history. And I think the experts for the eastern parts of Europe, the history of this studies were also were always Russia dominated, and that's also the problem when you. I mean. I don't know any, or maybe one specialist for the eastern parts of Europe who thinks that is not Russian fault, or who doesn't see that it's Russia's aggression, of course, and who doesn't see the truth, what is happening in Ukraine. But anyway, it's still, so it's also maybe a question of language. I mean, you had everywhere the opportunity to learn Russian at the universities, but Ukrainian, now it's developing. For example, in Frankfurt Oder or in Regensburg, you have these new institutions, but it's not only now developing, and it's really, it's a shame because, I mean, Ukrainian is it's a language which is spoken by many, many people. So I could learn Czech, but not Ukrainian. And Czech is spoken by less people, of course. And I think this is maybe the reason that it's so Russian dominated. But I don't really see that there are so many Russian experts in German media, more, of course, than Ukrainians. But I see more the German East or German specialists for eastern parts of Europe, but not the Russian.
How can German media be interested in involving Ukrainian political and cultural experts, opinion makers, historians, writers who will contribute in the current events in Ukraine?
Yeah, I think it's all about networking, really, and about one has to tell the others about Ukrainian experts, and so I think it's a really hard work just to be always on it, and I don't know what another plan I have not in mind. I mean, the German experts or German journalists who are working in Ukraine, they of course speak with Ukrainians there, but more with the normal people, I think, and with the politicians. But I don't know whether they could be something like a bridge between Ukrainian journalists and German media. I could imagine. I think that Vasily Golov, for example, I think he could do that, and maybe he does it. But yeah, my only idea is networking, empowering, and yeah, working together with people who have this entrance in German media, and not parallel media world. I think it's important that it is in internet, for example, there are a lot of very interesting Ukrainian news media, and it should be also in English, of course. But to come into the German media, I think it's very important to speak the language, of course. And because German media still, yeah, it's important to make it everything in German. But there are still also, I think, I think Vice, it's an organization in Berlin.
They are very great.
And they're working really hard on it. And so organizations like that are really very important. And there are a lot of important organizations, and they have to work together all over Germany. And I think this is really... That's also the target of our project. already, although there are existing already networks, but we want to strengthen it. And this event, Café Kyiv, is ideal for this kind of work, because everyone who is interested in Ukraine and the war and what's happening now is there. Not everyone, but many people. And it's in Berlin, so it's in the center of power and media. And so, yeah. I was there the last 2 years, and I was always very impressed. It's really very good. It should be, there are many people, and it should be more often, but it's very difficult to organize, I think.
Yes, last month I have a very strong discussion with journalists from Russia, from the liberal media, who provided idea that we Ukrainians, we need to cooperate with good Russians as Europe, and provide together rallies against the war, and so on. I completely disagree with it. I think we need to be the Ukrainians don't want to cooperate with Russians even good. What do you think about it?
I mean, the idea per se isn't bad, because the more Russians you have on your side, the better it could be. But on the other hand, you have still the effect like it was before, like people from outside think, yeah, Ukrainians, Russians, they're all parts of Eastern Europe. And I think it's very important to strengthen that Ukrainians are not Russia, and they should show their faces, their Ukrainian faces, and that it's another country with another history, and that the history always showed also that there was always a fight against Russia, because Russia had a fight against Ukraine, and that Russia also always wanted to be in Ukraine and to say it's a part of Russia. So people have to understand in Germany that it's not a new problem. That is a problem which was always said as a tradition in history. And for that, I think the problem of Ukraine was always to assimilate to the Russian world. And afterwards, nobody knew what's Ukrainian or what's Russian, or is it just like it was the word Little Russia, yeah, for example. So it's terrible. And for that, I understand that you don't want to work together with Russian journalists, although I think many of them were really on the side of Ukraine, but for them, it's also, of course, a problem of counteracting against their regime. So they're putting it a little bit too close together, because the two questions, yeah, of course, the problem of the regime is that they fight against Ukraine, or they started a war against Ukraine, but it is two separate things, and I think you should strengthen that. It's a pain, I think.
Yeah, and my last question would be tricky, and it's very hard to answer, but I ask you, how can we win information war with Russia in EU, especially in Germany? What are the shortage besides of expenses? Because we know that Russians have a lot of money for their propaganda in different levels in media, but what we need to do?
You mean in the sphere of media, or
on the media level? I need media level, the propaganda war against Russia propaganda.
Yeah, it's really a hard question. I always think about these young people, and you can do a counter propaganda, so to say. So you can also be on TikTok and make pro-Ukrainian, or what's pro-Ukrainian? I mean, pro-truth news for young people in the way the young people need it or like it. I mean, there are a lot of texts to debunk Russian propaganda in the internet, but for them, the most important thing are pictures, films, and something which is cool. And Russia and also China, by the way, they know how to deal with it, and there are a lot of experts there, I'm sure, and they know how to get the people. You can try to fight against it doing the same. Or you can, I think it's also important when I was in schools, I always have the impression for the young people who are used only to look in the smartphone. It's very important that real people speak with them. So I didn't show any films. So of course I had a PowerPoint presentation. I showed them, for example, maps, which is very important. When you see this huge map of Russia, and then this narrative, Russia has fear or thinks that the NATO will be aggressive, and then you see this huge country. It's so ridiculous. And sometimes when you show just like a map, you see like how the things are. But yeah, I mean, it's of course not possible to fight with real people against the internet always. But I think very important place I can also only repeat it is other schools, because that is a future generation. And I really have fear when I read something like this survey with 50% thinking that Russia is not Russia's fault, this war. It's terrible when you think they are our future politicians and journalists, maybe, yeah. So you have to start with them. On the other hand, we have a migrant society in Germany. So you also, when I was in school, when I spoke with young people, there are many different voices, of course. There are interesting histories of migrant families which fled from Afghanistan to Kyiv, and a second time they had to flee from Kyiv to Germany, and this kind of stories you only get in schools, because in the big cities here in Germany, 50, 60, 70% of the students have a migrant background. And so you have a lot of different or many different views on this history or on this war.